Okay, let's see, it's Wednesday, so that means tomorrow the assignment is due. And tomorrow the next assignment will come out, long we roll. But remember that I've given everyone an amnesty for the first 2 weeks. Stuff that has come due or will come due in the first 2 weeks, as long as you complete it by Tuesday at 11:59 p.m., it'll be fine. But after that, I would assume you're used to the deadlines and we'll roll from there. Yeah?
Sorry if I'm not understanding correctly, but is it just the Zybook assignments or every year assignments?
The Zybook assignments or PS1 or Lab 1. Lab 2 is a little tricky because that was just created based on attendance, so no way to go back in time. Yes?
So, well, isn't that like all the assignments then?
Yes, except Lab 2.
Huh, okay.
You can always give yourself a free pass on that. Yes? All the rest of the labs will be based on attendance. Yes?
So since Monday's a holiday, there's no Zybook due on Monday?
No.
It's all on Wednesday?
No, those I look due on Monday next week because it's a holiday.
Woo!
Okay, so I just want to say a couple words about communications. There's communicating with me, with TAs, with other students. Ask questions, complain about your grade, whatever. Use Piazza. You're tempted to email me something, use Piazza. If I want to make an announcement to the class, I'm going to use Piazza. If you're not subscribed, you won't get the announcement. Now there's another way students are tempted to communicate with us, and that's to attach notes anywhere Canvas will let you. A popular one is, we'll give you a grade back in Canvas on PS1, and there's a way to attach a grading, basically attach a question to the grade, you know, if you have a problem. Don't do that. There are too many places to leave notes in Canvas that we usually don't find them. So if there's an issue about the grading, once the grading comes out, use Piazza. That's our thing. So be sure you subscribe, or even if you don't have any questions, because you won't get announcements from me if you don't. Okay. Another thing I want to mention is, I'm always disappointed, and the TAs are disappointed, when someone comes to ask a question and we say, oh, Joe did that in lecture Wednesday, pull up the examples he used in lecture. And the student doesn't have the lecture in their Eclipse workspace. What I'm doing is, after lecture, I put the project I created during lecture up on Canvas, and you can use the Canvas project manager to pull it down in a few seconds. And then you have it to refer to. For example, the assignment we're doing right now is very similar. PS1 is very similar to 2 examples I did in the first week of class. And you know, if you're not looking at that, it'll be a lot harder. So any other questions before we start looking at new stuff? Yes?
On PS1, you said to use it as just one long main method. Because I remember you showed in lecture how to create a method to make certain things in the main easier. Are we not supposed to be doing that, or just all?
Okay, so what he's asking is, should he write one long main method for PS1, or should he break it out into smaller helper methods? I'm not expecting you to use helper methods. I'm not forbidding you either. I guess what I prefer is one short main method, as opposed to a long one. Anything else? Okay. Today we're going to talk about objects. And since this is a class called Introduction to Object-Oriented Programming, it's obviously an important concept. So far we've been using ints and doubles and chars and booleans. Those are called primitive types. There are other primitive types, long, short, float, and byte, that we won't use too much, if at all, this semester. But those are primitive types. And primitive types are built into the language, and you yourself can't create any more. You can't decide you want a new kind of primitive type and create a new type. And when we talk about the values of primitive types, we call them primitive values. So like 2, 5, the character X, true, false. Those are all examples of primitive values built into the language. Now, there are other types in Java. They're called reference types. And we've used strings. A string is not a primitive value. It's called a reference type. And we looked briefly at scanners. We'll look more at them today. Another example of reference types. When you look at the Java library, it is full of new reference types. And if you go to any number of websites where there are projects like Apache to develop Java libraries, you'll find more reference types. So there are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions or billions, depending on how you count, of reference types have been created over time. So that's a major way. In fact, the two major ways that we program is one, by creating new static methods, and two, by creating new reference types. Now, we're not to the point of being able to create new reference types yet. We're just going to use reference types. But eventually, it'll be a major topic. So to use a reference type, you have to know two things. You have to know how to create a new object. So values of reference types are called objects. And you have to know how to invoke methods on objects. So we'll look at a couple of examples, and I'll show you what I mean. Creating string object is easy because strings have literals. Unique among all the reference types, there are literal strings. So if you want the string hello, you just put it in double quotes. This is a test, double quotes. If you want 1, 2, 3 with new line characters embedded, that's how you do it. And so, as I mentioned, strings are unique in that there are string literals. There are not scanner literals. There are not literals of any other kind of reference type. Now, let's suppose you're writing a program and you have a string. What might you like to find out about the string? What's a question you might ask about it? Yes?
How long is the string?
How long is the string? Okay?
What's the specific character in the string?
Okay. What's the second character in the string? What's the last character in the string?
Does the string equal another string?
Are two strings same characters? Okay. Another thing you might ask is, take the string and give me back the three characters in the middle and make a new string from it. So, yes?
This is one of those where you don't have to create a new object in order to use the right.
Right, you don't create a new object because you can just use string literals. Yep.
Why is it that some objects you don't have to create new, don't have to write new?
Okay, he's saying, why is it for some objects you don't have to write new? Well, we haven't talked about new yet, but strings are the only ones for which you don't. Right? Okay, so let's look at some string methods. And the way I want you to think about it is these methods on objects. Think of them as asking questions or giving commands to objects. In the case of strings, it's just asking questions. And we've talked about static methods last time, and I mentioned that there are non-static methods. It's actually these methods that you apply to objects that are the non-static methods. So you use them a little bit differently. So this is how you find out the length of a string. So if you have a string and a variable s, you say s.length, paren. So s is the object. Dot says I'm going to apply a method to the object. Length is the name of the method. And what's the empty parentheses about? Yeah?
Methods are always followed by parentheses.
Well, they're always followed by parentheses, but why? Yeah? Okay, so he said this method accepts no arguments. So just like any other method, you can pass parameters to a method you're applying to an object. It turns out length, you don't need any extra information. You just say, s, give me your length. That's one way, that's how to read that. What would be the type of that expression in the middle right there? S.length with the empty parens. What's the type of that? What type of thing is that? Yeah?
Are you talking about the period operator?
No, I'm talking about the whole thing. S.length paren. That's an expression, yeah?
It's an integer.
It's an int. Right? It's not a string, it's not a double, it's an int. You get back an int. You ask what's the length of hello, you get back 5. So these methods have return types. Okay, here's a method, charadd. So s.charadd of 2, you're asking for the character at index 2 of the string. And the only tricky thing is Indexes start at 0. So if you're looking for the character at index 2 of world, it's R. So don't think of this as you're asking for the second character. You're asking for the, you'll be off by 1 if you think that way. You're asking for the character at index 2. So W is index 0, O is 1, R is 2. Okay? So another example. Here's substring. And here you're asking, this is how you ask for the first 3 characters. You say s.substring and you pass 2 parameters. The index at which you wish to start and the index right after where you want to end. So that's a little bit odd. So what would be world.substring of 0 and 3? We're asking for all the characters starting at index 0 and going to but not including index 3. Yeah?
WOR.
Right, so what we would get back is WOR, the string WOR. So the substring method can be used to pull strings apart. It doesn't modify S, it gives you back a new string. Okay? The index of method, you pass in a character like D, it will report the index at which, the first index at which D occurs, or -1 if D does not occur. So that's index of. That's how you compare strings for equality, the equals method. You ask is S1 dot equals to S2. Now, a lot of students are going to make this mistake. They have 2 strings, S1 and S2, and they want to decide if they're the same string in that, do they have the same characters? And they use double equals. That's very tempting. S1 double equals S2, the same way you would with ints or doubles or chars. That'll sometimes give you the answer you're expecting and sometimes not. We'll talk more about that later, but for right now, you just got to remember, don't compare strings or any other objects with double equals unless you really know what you're doing. So use the dot equals method to compare 2 strings for equality. Right about now, you may be thinking, Java is really complicated because already I've been exposed to strings and this method length and this method charadd and this method substring and this method index and this method equals. Well, the details never end. What's the answer to that? Yeah? You said read the documentation. And so the answer is, when you're first learning Java, it can seem really complicated. But most of the complication is in the library. In terms of new programming language stuff today, really what we've talked about is the period, how to apply a method to an object. So this notion of applying the method to an object ought to gel pretty fast. But the details of all the methods, there are lots of methods on strings I haven't listed. There are lots of methods on scanners. No one expects you to memorize every method in the library. You just need to know, yeah, there must be a way to find the length. And if you can't remember, I go to Eclipse and where I want to find the length, I just say dot. It'll show me all the possible methods and I say, oh yeah, it's length. Because I can't remember, is it length, is it size, is it whatever, number of characters. So don't be dismayed that there's a lot of detail in the slides. What I want you to get is the idea of applying a method to an object, just in that concept. Now, I want to compare the 2 kinds of methods that we have. On the left, that's something we talked about before. That's applying a static method. So someone tell me, what are the parts of a static method call? What's the math? What role does math play? Yeah. Math is a class. And what is square root, SQRT? Yeah. That's a method, a static method the class provides. So you're asking for the square root method from the math class. And then you pass it a parameter. And you get back the square root of the number. Integer.parseInt, same deal. Class name, dot, method name, and then, in that case, 1 parameter. So that's what static methods calls look like. Okay? Now here are 2 non-static method calls. What's the difference? They look pretty similar. Yeah?
You're calling the method on the object rather than the class.
Okay, so in the first case with static methods, we're just saying, I want the square root method from the math class. So the class is just serving to organize the methods. Down here, we don't mention a class. We say object. We give an object dot method name. So we're saying, please apply the index of method to the object s and pass in the parameter x. Or please apply the char@, method to the object s and passing the parameter 5. So with objects, you are always applying methods to the object. Now, up there, I highlighted 5.0 in yellow and the string 1578 in yellow. Down here, I highlighted the 5 in yellow and the character x in yellow, but I also highlighted the object s because, in essence, s and 5 are both parameters of that char@, method. Okay? It's just that s has a special role. It's the object on which the method is being applied to, so it comes first. So if these were static methods, it would say something like string.index of s comma x, or string.char@ of s comma 5. But these aren't static methods. So you think of the object as a parameter. Okay? And you often see it called the implicit parameter because it doesn't show up in the parentheses. But think of it as a parameter. And just to drive this home, here is the Javadoc for the char@, method. And let me read it to you. First of all, you see public char@, int index. That's what you'd see if you looked at the Javadoc in Eclipse. And it says, returns the char value at the specified index. And then goes on. Returns the char value at the specified index. And you might look at that. And what's missing is the specified index of what? Right? It gives an index, but what string are we talking about? I mean, there's no string up there. There's no string that shows as a parameter. For what string are we going to find the character at the given index? This documentation seems to be missing something. How do we know what string we're supposed to be looking at? Does it show up in the header? Yes?
It's an object.
Well, it's an object, but which one? There could be lots of strings out there. Yeah.
The one that comes before the dot.
Right. When you call index of, you have to give an object before the dot. And so what we say is, the what is the object on which the method was invoked. Okay? And that means the object that was right before the dot where the thing was called. The object on which the method was invoked. And you'll become familiar with that phrase. On the final exam, there will be a question, and the answer will be the object on which the method was invoked. And there were 4 points. Some of you will miss it. I promise you. Sometimes I even put 8 boxes. I say, write 1 word in each box. And the answer to the question is the object on which the method was invoked, also known as the implicit parameter. Okay? So you don't see it in the documentation because it's implicit. It's the object on which the method was invoked. And what is the type of the implicit parameter? What type should it be if you're using the index of method? Because we know that index needs to be an int. How do you know what type that the object that you're invoking, the method on which you're invoking, the object on which the method was invoked? How do you know its type?
Probably the documentation would be under like the string object.
Right. This documentation is in the string class. So the implicit parameter has to be a string. So even the type is implicit. Okay. So I'm going to drop now into Eclipse. And in fact, I'm going to go into JShell. And we're going to play around with objects. Okay, hold on a second while I make this bigger. Okay, so let's create a string here. Yeah. Never had that problem before. Let me, so I could ask this thing its length. So I'm asking the string world, what is your length? Object dot method. So world is the object in which the method was invoked, and what's the answer going to be? 5. Okay. What if I did this? Suppose I stored an object in a variable, and now I say s dot length. What's the answer going to be? 4. Because s contains a string test. If I change that to world, and then repeat and ask, what is s's length? What are we going to get as the answer? 5 again. Okay. So let's do s dot char at 0. So s right now is WORLD. So what's char at going to return? W. That's the character at index 0. If I say something like s dot upstream, I showed you one version, here's another. This says give me everything from the second index to the end of the string. So we got world, we're asking for everything from the second index to the end of the string. What string are we going to get back? What character is at index 2? A world. Yeah. Yeah, RLD. Get back the string RLD. Okay. What if we do this? What are we asking for there? Yeah.
Starts at index 1. And
Starts at index 1 and goes to, but does not include index 3.
does not include the last one.
Yeah. So what will we get? Should be OR. Okay. Those are all examples of using methods to manipulate an object, a string object. Now there are lots of methods. If I do s dot here and hit tab, those are all the string methods that there are. I mean, we've looked at a few of them. There are others. Some of them aren't much used, others are very useful. Like there's that replace method. So if I say replace in s, replace every, let's say every r with an x, and give me the string back. What's that going to give me back? WOXLD. I'll put a semicolon instead of a tick. Now the original string is unaffected. Strings are what we call immutable. There's no way to change a string. All you can do is create new strings. Okay. So various ways to manipulate strings. Yeah?
You can reassign strings.
Oh, you can change what's stored in a string variable.
But the object itself.
Right. But if I have, no matter what I do, if I say s dot and I run some method, and then I ask what's s, it will still be the same thing. Okay? So, let's take a break from talking about those. Before we look at another example of an object, let's do something different. Let's write a little bit of code. Now, this first example doesn't have anything to do with objects. This is more like a review from last time. I want a method that we give it a double x. I want to get the fourth root back. And I want you to think about it here. Take 30 seconds, talk to people around you if you need to. How would you figure out the fourth root? Right, the square root is the second root. The cube root's the third root. I'm with the fourth root. So the fourth root of 16 would be 2. And when you're writing a method, you gotta think, you know, what do I know? What do I know how to do in the programming language, and how can I use that to achieve what I need? So just think about it. You got 15 seconds left.
I just forgot what we're doing.
Okay, I want at least 2 ways to do this. So you got a way? Okay, so he's remembering there's a PAL method. And it takes a number such as x, and then the power to which we want to take it. What power do we want to take it to? Okay, like 1 over 4. Okay, now suppose we did that, what would happen? What is 1 divided by 4? Yeah, it's 0. Right, 1 divided by 4 is 0 because they're integers. Right? And so we get back 1. No matter what we gave it as x, we get back 1. So you're very, very close. What should we use instead? We could do 1.0 divided by 4.0, or we could just skip the middleman and just put 0.25 in. So that would work. That would give us the fourth root, because there's a method that raises a number to any given power. So it'll raise it to the 1/4 root. What would be another way to do the same thing without using PAL? Can anyone think of that? Yeah?
Take the square root twice.
Right. So we could say, he said take the square root twice, so we could say return math dot square root of. And you notice, you almost can't help but get help from Eclipse. You type a dot, it just shows you what the choices are. And it'll show you the documentation of these methods if you don't remember. And the problem is getting the parentheses to balance. And there we have, return the square root of the square root of x. Those are 2 equivalent ways. Now, why does it have the second way underlined in red? Does that mean it's wrong? Yeah. Right, you can't return, basically, the code is executed until it hits a return statement. So can this return statement even ever be executed? It'll never be reached because there's no way to get there because you hit the first return statement. In fact, the error message says, unreachable code. It figures if there's code that can't even be executed, it must be wrong. So either one or the other will work just fine. Same answer. So in both cases, what it came down to was knowing, okay, I know there's a power method. You may not remember exactly what it was called, but it's easy to discover in Eclipse. Or you might remember there's a square root method. Either way will get you there. You just have to know what do you know how to do and how can you use that to accomplish the new thing you're trying to do. So incidentally, your next assignment will be a bunch of methods like this. That you're just going to implement a bunch of methods, just like we're doing here. So you think of this as practice for that. Right here. I want to, if age is going to be the age of a person, and if that person is a teenager, i.e. if their age is somewhere in the range 13 to 19, we're going to return true. And if they're either too young to be a teenager or too old to be a teenager, we're going to return false. Okay? So take a minute and figure out how to do this one. What do we return as the answer? Talk to the people around you. How do you compute a truth value?
We're going to want an if statement here.
Just greater than 12 and less than 15.
Let's see if I remember the syntax.
Oh, yes, let's read this 19. Wait, read the final teenagers 18 or 19.
You
did? Okay.
Okay, let's see if you have an idea.
Well, I don't know. I think 17 is the cutoff.
How can we do this?
I honestly.
let me stop you there. So she said if, and then age is greater or equal to 13. And the reason I stopped you there is, I forgot to mention, you can't use ifs before Labor Day. It's just not done.
No!
I want to do this without a conditional. We haven't talked about ifs yet. That's the bottom line. We'll talk about it next week. Yeah?
Age is equal to, like, a double equal sign, or not double equal sign, sorry, greater than or equal to 12, and,
Well, greater than 12.
right, sorry, greater than
Or
12.
greater than or equal to 13.
Less than 20.
Now, this is probably a lot like, who said that? You. That's a lot like yours, except there's no if involved. So, let's look at what it has up there. We're returning this weird thing. And I have found, see, a lot of students, when you learn about conditionals, you'll find out you could have written this as if age is greater than 12 and age is less than 20, return true, else return false. But this is a cleaner, shorter method. Yeah.
So what's the significance of using an if statement as opposed to this?
Say it again.
What's the significance of using an if statement as opposed to this? It'll just...
Well, okay, so again, I haven't talked about if statements, so some of you don't know what I'm talking about at all. This is preferable to using an if statement. Yeah?
So in this case, you don't have to just like return a certain variable, you could just return.
Yeah. When you say return in a program, what has to be after it is an expression. It could be any expression. In this case, it's that expression I highlighted in blue. Okay? So, suppose age is 5. What's the value of that blue going to be?
I was actually going back. So does that expression give you a Boolean output?
Sure. This is a Boolean expression because it involves, okay, let's think about it. What kind of thing is that? What's the type of that expression? That's a Boolean. It's either going to be true or false. This is either going to be true or false. And then we're ANDing two Booleans together. That's either going to be true or false. So this will return true if this is true and that is true. So let's go through it. Suppose age is 5. What will this be? False. And then this will be true, but false and true is false. So we'll return false. Suppose age is 60. This will be true, but this will be false. And together you get false. But if you got something like 15, this will be true. This will be true. True and true is true. And so true will be returned. So just like you're all comfortable with calculating numbers. If this method worked to average x and y, you might say return x plus y divided by 2. That makes sense. This is just computing with Booleans, computing with truth values. It takes a little bit of getting used to. Okay? Any questions? Yeah?
So that doesn't require that any input statement in that method?
Okay, he said doesn't require any input statements. Well, right. Typically, methods don't do input. They just take parameters and return results. Now, if you're going to use this in a program, there'd be some other method, perhaps the main method, that is taking in the ages of people and printing out whether or not they're teenagers. But this method doesn't worry about how it's going to be used. It's just, whoever, when we implement it, we're just saying this might be a generally useful method to be able to tell if someone's a teenager. Yeah?
What's the order of operations for Boolean operators?
The order of operations, well, that's a great question. Because you might look at this and say, oh, maybe it's trying to AND together the 12 and age. So operators have an order in which they're done. I told you before that Java likes to do multiplication before it does any additions. And here it comes down, you have to know what's the relative preference. Does it prefer to do greater than before ampersand or not? And typically, I can't remember most of those things. And so what you do is, it's probably good style to put these parentheses here just to say, this is what I really mean. Then that question would come up. You wouldn't have to think, oh, which does it do first? So, putting some parentheses to emphasize the grouping is often a good idea. Yeah, way in the back.
Would it also work to write return 12
No. You can't say 12 less than age less than 20. You see that in the math book, but it doesn't work in Java. You have to have two separate comparisons and AND them together. Any other questions? Incidentally, what if I'm not around and you want to know, can you write 12 less than age less than 20? Yeah, you can just come down here and write, wherever I am, 12 less than, well, I don't have an age, so I'll do 15. And it's going to tell you that doesn't work. Okay. What about this one here? Reports whether C is a letter in the second half of the... No, I'm going to skip that one. I want to look at this one right here. I want to find out if, given a string S and a character C, does the string contain the character C, where case doesn't matter. So maybe, if string was hello and the character was a capital H, we should get true whether or not the H in the string is capitalized or not. So we want case not to matter. But to make it simple, let's suppose case did matter. Suppose we want to know whether the string contains that character somewhere. How would we do that? Now now we're using objects. Yeah.
S dot contains.
S dot, is there a contains method? Okay. There's a contains method, but it takes it says a character sequence, so that'll amount to a string. We got a character. So it turns out there's not a method that'll tell you whether a string contains a character. There's one that'll tell you whether a string contains another string. Yeah?
What if you were to do like the index of and then look for the character?
Okay, what if we ask, what's the index of C? Now what does that return? If you ask for the index of a character in a string, what does it return? Returns the index. And what does it return if the character isn't in the string? Well, if we do this, that's the control space, brings up the documentation, blah, blah, blah. And if no such character occurs in this string, then -1 is returned. Okay. That's what we were after. All right, so how are we going to know, given the return value of index of, we got to do index of C, how do we know whether it's in there or not? That's one way. So let's break it down. Suppose the string is hello and the character is X. What's the value of that blue expression going to be? That's going to be -1. That is not greater than or equal to 0. So it's going to be false. On the other hand, if the string is hello and C is H, what's the value of this expression going to be? 0. And 0 is greater than or equal to 0. And so we'll get true back. So that'll work just fine. But, well, first let me see if there are any questions about that. For again, computing a Boolean without using a conditional statement. We'll talk about them next month, but not today. Yeah?
So since it's a lowercase c, is that only going to work for lowercase c?
No, the variable is lowercase, but you don't know what character is in it. There could be a capital X in that variable C. We haven't dealt with the case problem yet. Yeah.
But as it's written, that it is case sensitive, right?
As written, it's case sensitive, yes. Yeah, back there.
So, what string are we left with there?
Ah, great. What string are we asking about? Where's the string coming from? Well, it's this string right here. It's whatever string you pass as a parameter to contains. So if you want to see this in action, we're going to right-click on the project and say Launch JShell. And let's do this. Let's say, I'm going to import import cs14chem.star. My method is static, my class is static demo, so I say static demo dot contains, and we'll pass hello, and we'll ask, does that contain X? Okay, so look right here. This is the hello. The value of S will be hello, and the value of C will be X. And it's going to ask for the index of X in the string hello, and compare, and give the answer back. So what should we expect to see as our answer? False. On the other hand, if we ask, does it contain H? We should get true. However, if we ask, does it contain a capital H? It's going to say false, but I'd rather it say true. So let's go back and see, how can we fix this? It's not obvious how to fix it. Yeah?
Isn't there also another one of the string method of the object methods that you can do, where you can change, where you can force it to be an uppercase or lowercase?
All right, exactly. So we go look at the methods, and blah, blah, blah. 2 uppercase appears down here at the bottom. So I just double-clicked on it, and there it wrote the program for me. So s.2 uppercase converts the string to uppercase. So if the string is lowercase hello, s.2 uppercase will be the string uppercase hello. Yeah? Right. We also need to convert the character to uppercase. So I wonder what method we would apply to C. What do you think? Yeah? Well, right, but if I hit dot, no suggestions appear. Why is it not providing me with some ideas of methods I can provide? Yeah? Right, C is not a reference type. C is a primitive type. Primitive types don't have methods that you can apply to them. But fortunately, there's a class called character that has a static method called to upper, I think it is, to uppercase. Yeah. And we'll put C in there. So that looks like a mouthful, but what's going on? Let's take it from left to right. We get a string in. What's that going to be? What's the value of that blue going to be in terms of the string that came in as a parameter? Let's say S was lowercase hello. What's that blue? What's the value of that blue expression going to be? Yeah?
Uppercase hello.
Uppercase hello. So we're asking, does the uppercase version of the string contain a character? We're not asking about C, we're asking about what? Yeah?
Uppercase.
The uppercase version of whatever is stored in C. So just everything, the string gets converted to uppercase, the character gets converted to uppercase, and then we just check to see if one contains the other. Okay? So to do that, I had to make use of 2 methods on strings. One to put the string, to create an uppercase version, one for index of, and I had to rely on a static method in the character class that takes a character and returns its uppercase version. Yeah?
Sorry, I know you said this, but what is the purpose of the greater than or equal to 0?
Okay? This big expression right here is going to be the index of the uppercase character in the uppercase string. If it's in the string, if the character doesn't occur in the string, we get -1 back. So if this blue thing is -1, that means the character is not in the string and we will return false. Otherwise, we return 0. It might be a little more obvious. Maybe we should write it this way. So we give the equivalent answer. -1 means it's not there. Otherwise, it is there. So this is programming. You take what you know how to do, which in this case is convert strings to uppercase, find indexes of characters in strings, and convert characters to uppercase, and combine them, and get something new. It's a new part now. So now you got a contains method you could use maybe to build an even more complicated method. Okay? All right, let's take a break, and we'll continue along this line. Okay, let's get started again. Okay, so I've restarted JShell because I just want to see if this works. So I'm already getting tired of having to type this every time. I'm going to change the plugin so I don't have to. So I import the package, and I'm going to say static demo dot contains, and we'll ask this hello contain that, where it's case insensitive, and we should get back true, except I misspelled something. Okay. But if I asked this contain like lowercase x, it should say false. So we seem to be on the right track there. Okay, any questions about that method? That's sort of our first example where we used objects. We had to use string objects to make progress. Yeah?
If the variable c was already an uppercase statement, would two uppercase do anything to that?
Right, so he's asking, suppose C contained an uppercase letter. Well, yeah, two uppercase would just return the same letter.
Okay.
There's no harm in doing it. Same thing with the string. The string might not change either. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about we're going to use something different, something called a scanner. And I have those slides we're looking at, they have information about scanners, but you can look at it there later. I'll just do it here because it's convenient to do it in JShell. So a scanner is a class. To use it, you need to import java.util.star. That's its package. It turns out if you want to see what's imported in JShell, you can type /imports, and so you can see we've added what it imports. We've got java.util in there now. But if you use it in the program, you have to import java.util. And in fact, you'll see in this class right here, it doesn't have it yet. We're going to have to add it. All right, now what a scanner does, a scanner is a convenient way to take text in the, like say a string, or text from a file, or text from the keyboard, and break it up into what are called tokens, into chunks. So a token, what you can think of is, imagine a string that contains white space and non-white space. So the tokens are the things that are separated by the white space. So for example, if we had a string like this, it would have 4 tokens, 4 chunks. And it doesn't, the amount of white space doesn't matter. So that string right there would contain how many tokens? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's right. And let's save that. Okay, so we have a string S. Now, a scanner is an object that specializes in breaking text into chunks, into tokens. The problem is, what we haven't talked about yet is how to create a new object. Because tokens don't have literals, you have to create them. And so to create a new object, you use what's called a constructor. So this is how you create a new a scanner. We're going to store that variable right there. So to create a new object, you use a keyword. Now, what do you suppose is the keyword that says, I want a new object? It's new. So you say, give me a new scanner.
Why does it say string scanner?
That's a good question. We're trying to create a scanner, not a string, so I need to, it's a scanner. So new scanner, you're saying, I want a new scanner object. And that's the thing that we're using in the new statement is we're calling a constructor. So classes provide methods and they provide constructors. Constructors are used to create new objects. The methods are used to manipulate them. In this case, I want to create a new scanner that looks for chunks in the string S. Yeah?
Wouldn't it be SCNR? Or is that?
Yeah, SCN is just a variable name.
You can have that be.
It can be anything I want, yeah. I really wanted to call it S. But that's taken. I already use a string S. So in lecture, I tend to use short variables just because it's easy to type. You know, when I program for real, I try to be a little bit more descriptive. So let's look at that. It looks like, first of all, suppose you left the new out. What does that look like we're doing? Looks like we're calling a method called scanner, right? Okay? But there could never be a method called scanner because it's the name of a class. And so you know you're using a constructor because the constructor always has the same name as its class. And it just turns out that if you want to create a new scanner, you say new scanner and you pass it the thing you want it to manipulate. Now let me hit tab here. Actually, I did too many. No, there's too much documentation, rats. All right, back up, try it again. So you can see right there, you can make a scanner out of an input stream or out of a file or out of a number of things. So we're going to make a scanner out of this. So we're invoking the constructor, and now we have a new scanner. It sort of prints out something weird looking, but trust me, it's something that will take apart that string for us. So that's another new concept today, the concept of a constructor. Classes that provide new reference types will provide one or more constructors. They all have the same name as the class, and then it's to manipulate the object. we've got a scanner that's going to take apart S. Now, what can we do with a scanner? How can we find out if you've never used a scanner before? Yeah?
Type scn dot, and then you can look at them.
Yeah, scn dot. Now, if we're in Eclipse, not in JShell, just when we type that dot, it would give us suggestions. But in JShell, you got to type a tab. Those are all the things we can do with scanners. So this is sort of the most basic thing. That's just asking, is there another token to be had? Okay, now right now the scanner contains that string, and that string was made up of 5 tokens. So surely there's another token to be had. Oh, I got that wrong. I asked for the next token. S.next asked for the next token, and so it gave me that. Now why did it give me that particular string back? Because the string that we made the scanner out of, somewhere up here, there it is. That was the first token right there. So it pulled out the first token for us. Now, let's ask, is there another token? It says, yes, there's another token. So we can ask, okay, what is it? Turns out I've typed the same thing several times. We can ask, okay, is there another token? What's it going to say? Yep, there's still another one, so let's get it out. I just typed the same thing 3 times when I made that string. Now we ask, is there another token? What's it going to say? And then we can say, what is it? And we can say, is there another token? What is it? And then we say, is there another token? It will say, false. And now if we insist on getting the next token, we're going to get an exception, so something went wrong. Well, nothing went wrong, that's what it's supposed to do, but there just wasn't another token to be had, yeah?
What shortcut are you using to...
I'm using the arrow keys, the up arrow key to go back in time, so I don't have to type over and over again the same things in JShell.
If you had multiple scanners for different things, you just have the name be right there before like .next.
Yeah, if we had 2 scanners, X and Y, we could do X.next, Y.next, right? Right? Let's do it again. Let's say scanner is now a new scanner, and we're going to give it X123. So scanner contains 3 tokens. So if I say scan.hasNext, it's going to say true. And if I ask it to give me the next one, it'll give me back the X, the string X. Now, scanner has another capability. I don't have to just say, does it have a next token? You can say, does it have a next token, and is that token an int? So there we're asking, is there a next token, and is it an int? And it'll say, true. And I don't just have to say, scanner.next, give me the next token. I can say, give me the next token, and convert it to an int before you give it to me. So what am I going to get back when I do that? Yeah. Yeah. I get back the integer 1, not the string containing 1. Now, I ask, is there a next int? It'll say yes, because it'll be that 23. But what if instead of asking for the next int, I just said, give me the next token? This is subtle. What's it going to give me back? Yeah. The string 23, so you'll see that it has quote marks around it. Give me back the string 23, not the integer 23. It didn't do the conversion because we didn't ask for it. And now if I ask, is there a next token? It will say false. I'm trying to find has next. It'll say false because it's exhausted. So, yeah. He asked, are you going to be required to memorize all the methods? No. You can't help but memorize the ones you use a lot. But when I program in Java, I rely on IntelliSense. I don't have the entire library memorized.
So in a test, are we going to be like have
Okay, so now he's worried about the midterm, and the midterm is a little bit weird in the final because you'll be in this room, or the one upstairs, writing code on paper, which you don't do normally. So I keep the programs really small and simple, so memory won't be a problem. Yes?
I'm having some confusion about what you did up there. When you made a new scanner.
Right.
You made that X123.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering how you got that new scanner to replace the old scanner of the same name, the other SCN, because I just did the same thing, and yet if you still use the old scanner.
Okay, so where I created the scanner was right here. I created a new scanner. I called the constructor with new, then created a new scanner, and I stored it back in the same variable. So now I was using the same variable, but it contained a completely different scanner.
Oh man, I did. I was stupid. I did scanner dot.
Yeah.
Is the scanner held in class or just?
Is the scanner what?
Held in class.
Held in the class? No, it's stored in the variable. When you create the scanner, you know, right here, when we created it, we stored it in the variable SCN, and that's where it is. Yeah, I'll start with you and then you.
So, in that string X123, you asked if the next token was like an integer. So that could recognize that, even though it was a string, you recognize that it was an integer.
What it recognizes is, okay, the next chunk, after we got the X out of there, the next chunk was the string 1, and it's smart enough to know that will parse as an int. And so rather than getting the string out and then parsing it, we just let the scanner do it for us. Someone else had a question. Yeah?
So on the, like you could type in new scanner like system.in. Is system an object or .in?
He's asking about system. You know, when you do system.out.println or system.in.read or something, what are those things? It turns out system.in is an object. System.out is an object. And as for what why you say system.out instead of just out, that's a topic for another day. But yes, if you've been using println statements, you've been using objects and methods. Because println is just a method on that out object. Yeah?
So the scanner will always implicitly remember where it is in the string?
Yeah, the scanner remembers where it is. So it's different. There's a fundamental difference between a scanner object and a string object, besides the fact that they have completely different purposes. And the difference is, strings are immutable. There is no method that will modify a string. Best you can do is take the current string and get a new one that's sort of like it. When you call methods on scanners, like when you do next, that scanner has changed. You don't get the same answer every time you say next, right? You say next, you get the first token. You say next, you get the next token. Next, the one after that. Whereas a string, if you keep calling the same method over and over again, you get the same answer every time. S.length will always return the same length, at least until you replace what's in S.
And if we used it as variables, it would have the last next, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Scanner object remembers where it was. Okay. Okay, so let's do something with scanners. Here, you are given a string, and we're going to assume that the string consists of integers separated by white space. So it might be 57, space, 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 25, tab, 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 18, return, 42, space, so on. But every token turns out to be an integer. So I want to take the string and add up the first two tokens that it contains and return that sum. How do we do that? How do we get the first integer out? Yeah?
Can we do next int and assign that to a variable?
We could, but I don't feel like it. Let's just get the next int. Oh, okay. Now, why isn't that working? Yeah? Right. He's saying having used the constructor, yeah, S isn't a scanner. S is a string. So what are we going to have to do in order to pull the tokens out of the string? What do we need? Yeah? We need to create a scanner. So we got to create a new scanner. We got to call it something. So I'll call it SCN. So we'll call the constructor. And what do we create the scanner from? We need a parameter that the thing is going to take apart. Yep. The string S that was passed as a parameter to the method. So now we have created a scanner that's just going to be used internally to the add first two tokens method. Now that we have the scanner, how can we get the first integer out of the token, out of the string? So we'll just do next int. That's all it takes. We create a scanner to consume the string, and then we just we call or scan.nextInt twice. We get the first one, we get the second, we add them together, we return, we're done. Yeah?
Are we getting the first two tokens or the first two integers?
You're getting the first two tokens, and they had better be integers. Because if they aren't, this will crash. So we're assuming that the string contains only integer tokens. Yeah?
So can I create like on the same line as the return line, create a new scanner and then invoke a method directly after creating the new scanner?
I mean, yeah, you could do something like this. You could say scanner s dot, you say new scanner s. New scanner s is an object. And if you wanted to, you could say as next, say. But in this case, I mean, there's no way to make this any shorter. In one step, you create the scanner, the next step, we use it. So 2 lines is the best I can do. Yeah?
So while the scanner does read data, you can't just use scanner to get user input, right? You have to have like all at once.
You've got to get the input from somewhere.
Right.
Yes. Now, what you can do that would create a scanner that takes its input from the keyboard. So when we ran add first two tokens, it would be expecting us to be typing some stuff, and the scanner would consume what we typed. Yeah?
So I just noticed that your add first two tokens method has the type double. Will it actually return a double from the integer that you...
Yeah, so I didn't mean this to be ints, I meant to be consuming doubles, not ints, just for variety's sake. That's better. It would have worked as long as the tokens were actually ints. Yeah?
If you execute code in main and main calls the static method add first two tokens twice, will the second call of add first two tokens mess anything up?
Okay.
Since it'll be
So he's saying, suppose the main method calls add first two tokens, passes in a string, the string is turned into a scanner, the scanner grabs the first two doubles, adds them, and returns them. Then we call the method again. Does anything go haywire?
It's making a new scanner that's called
Right.
something.
It's making a new scanner. That old scanner is history. It's gone.
Oh, does it get deleted?
It's just not accessible anymore because it's just, once the method returns, its local variables disappear. And that particular scanner is no way to refer to it anymore. So yeah, nothing goes wrong. You can call as many times as you want. Yeah?
Just to be clear, the tokens are stored in the string S.
The tokens that the scanner is getting are in the string S. Yeah, it's taking apart the string S. So just to show you, let's go restart JShell. And let's import Java.util. And let's do add, oops, this is called static demo. Add first two tokens, and we'll give it 34.5, 78.2. Okay. So what should be the value of that method call? We're passing in that string. What are we going to get back? Roughly. Something 0.7, I think. A little bit over 100.7. It's going to add those first two tokens together. 112.7. So the string is passed to the scanner constructor. Now we got a scanner object. It takes the string apart, gives us back doubles. Yeah?
You wanted to add up, let's say, the second and third, would you just call the scanner one time before that?
Right, so he's asking, suppose if you wanted to add up the second and the third and ignore the first. So you would just do this. You'd say scanner dot. You just do that, and you don't care what it returns, so we just throw away the return value. And then we return the sum of the second and the third. Yeah?
So if the characters between the doubles are not white spaces, this won't work, right?
Right, so she asked if the characters in between aren't white spaces. So let's suppose we did this. Yeah?
No, so there's no white space.
No white
There is
space?
no white space at all, it just won't work, right?
Well, if there's no white space at all, there'll just be one, yeah.
And then there's other characters that are like
Right,
letters.
that won't work because that first token is not a legal double because it's got 2 decimal points in it. Yeah, this only works if it's formatted just so. Yeah?
Is there a way to call a specific token, like say you have a whole bunch of tokens in a string, is there a way to call like the 7th one?
He's asking, is there a way to get the 7th one? There's not a way to say, give me the 7th token. What you have to do is ask for 7 over and over again. Ask over and over again for 7. Yeah?
Is there like dot previous method?
No, you can't go, he's asking, is there a dot previous? And you can't go backwards. This is just,
You have to create a new scanner in order to read something you missed?
yeah, if you have a string and you went past something, you gotta create a new scanner. It's just meant for, you know, we're just using it for strings because it's easy to do here, but most often it's used for reading files. So you take a file and you start reading from it. You can use the scanner to pull lines out at a time or to pull words out at a time, but you can't go backwards, it's just forward. Okay? Now, suppose we're given 2 scanners as parameters. So we're given 2 scanners as parameters. So the scanners have already been created for us. And we want to know, do they start with the same token? Is the first token in S1 the same as the first token in S2? How would you do that? Yeah. Okay. So he said S1.next. That will be the first token in S1, right? Now, what will be the first token in S2? Yeah, that's an easy question. Once you see how to do it to S1, it's easy to see how to do it to S2. Easy, but I typed something wrong. Okay, so S1.next is what? What kind of thing is S1.next? It's a string, i.e. the first token from S1. And this is a string, i.e. the first token from S2. And basically, I want to determine if they're the same string. And the way to do that is with the equals method for strings. So we just say dot equals. And boom. So let's take the 2 scanners, pull a token out of each, compare them with dot equals. Now, I understand, you know, I've been doing this for years, and most of you are just seeing it for the first time here. It might be easier for you to think about it this way. You might say, okay, let's get token 1. And then let's get token 2. And then let's compare them. And then let's return the result. So that's another way you can write the same method. And that one, it's more obvious what the steps are, right? First, we get the token T1, which is the first token from S1. Then we get the first token from S2. Then we compare the two with dot equals and save either true or false in result. Then we return result. So it may be the first way is more the way you want to think about it, and that's fine. This is the way I tend to think about it. It's just by a single expression. Yeah?
So if you're using a method, is that one of the practicals of constructor?
Well, okay, he's saying, okay, we're not using a constructor in here. So how do we get away without using a constructor? Yeah? Yeah, because the scanners had to be created somewhere. They were created outside the method. So let's run this method. Let's refresh JShell here. So we're going to import the package that we're working on. Okay, so if I want to test start with same token, I need two scanners, right? So I'm going to say scanner X equals new scanner. And I'm going to say scanner Y equals new scanner. Yeah, I'll go back and fix that. And let's say it's hello world. Okay, so I've created the scanner objects. Now I can call the method. And I pass in X and Y. So I first create the scanners. So I did use a constructor. I just didn't use them in the method. And what should it return? Right. What if I call it again? You got an answer to that question? Okay.
I think it would be false because the scanner is outside of that method.
Okay. He's saying it's going to return false. Now, it looks like it shouldn't, because it's exactly the same method call. But why is it different? Yeah. Right, we're using the same scanners and they have changed. The first time we called it and the method extracted the first token in X, it got out hello. What's going to happen the next time we call it? It's going to get there. And so it's going to say, no, they do not start with the same token because now they've changed. Now, to get the same answer again, what we need to do is recreate X, recreate Y, and then make the method call. And we get the true back, but if we do it again, we'll get the false back. Scanners are mutable. They can change. When you call methods on them, they change. Okay, so your PS2, which is due a week from tomorrow, so I won't see you again until Wednesday, next week. It's going to involve writing methods that use static methods in the Java library. You'll be using strings, you'll be using scanners. And just to keep you on your toes, you'll be using something called a big integer, which is a class I have talked about. You'll have to discover how to use it for yourself. But it'll be a lot of fun. Let's end here. Once you come down, I'll ask you a question. Have a good Labor Day.